Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in the world, and welcome to the FIP YouTube channel, FIP World. I'm James Hughes, President and CEO of FIP, one of the world's leading media trade associations. Now in January, Jim Elliott and John French co-hosted a well-attended FIP Insider webinar titled What Smart Companies Are Doing to Prepare for the Rebound. You can find the video of that session elsewhere on this channel. Now we're delighted to be working with them once again in presenting this video series consisting of 3 sessions all about managing the sales force during the rebound. Jim and John will be asking their guests how they will be helping salespeople get back in front of customers, how they plan to bring sales teams back into the office, what's happening with hiring and onboarding, and the effect of various technologies, including sales empowerment software and video conferencing. Now, since 1984, Jim has run the outsourced advertising sales company he founded, James G. Elliott Co. Inc., and having led 3 major publishing companies, John French is currently consulting at John French LLC. I'm now going to hand over to your hosts for this session, so take it away, Jim and John.
I'm proud to have as my guest and a friend of mine for many years, Steve Grossman. Steve Grossman is the president of Steve Grossman Associates, a leading sales performance consulting organization in Chicago. His clients are C-suite executives at large and mid-size sales organizations who bring him in to build, optimize, and enhance sales performance and sales management teams across their organizations in various sectors, including distribution, technology and software, medical products and supplies, sports and entertainment, travel and hospitality, business and professional services, financial services, and general manufacturing. Before founding his own company, Steve was a partner at Aon Hewitt and Mercer, where he led Mercer's sales effectiveness business in North America for 15 years. I met Steve on a project in the private equity world in the consumer magazine brand area. So I'm very, very pleased to present you, Steve Grossman. So when things get, quote, back to normal, as they're starting to now, how will travel budgets be affected as sales calls resume? Obviously, that's an expense, and a lot of companies have saved a lot of money by not having salespeople travel. Will they be traveling as much, do you think? Or is it industry by industry, or will it be kind of a hybrid?
I guess the only answer I can give with any confidence is it's going to be a hybrid. But what we started seeing, right from the beginning, and I think it's continuing, is the efficiency on both ends of the sales equation to doing things virtually, not getting on planes as often as we used to. We used to get on a plane literally at the drop of a hat to go to a 1-hour meeting and spend 8 hours going through O'Hare. Look back on that, it was nuts from an efficiency standpoint, and time efficiency and then cost efficiency. So I think it's going to settle in on, you'll still have the face-to-face, but there'll be, maybe after you've had a series of virtual calls and meetings, when you need to really get face-to-face, if there's a real need to go in and do whiteboarding as literally, or just to go back to having a dinner with people. But I think the days of just going to a meeting and calling people in from all over the country for a meeting, I think those days are gone.
But there's also a concern, although it's much less now than it was even 4 or 8 weeks ago, the sensitivity of telling people to do something they may not be comfortable doing, if they're comfortable coming back in the office. Any advice there?
Yeah, I think it remains to be seen how that's going to play out. There's still a strong support, strong advocacy and attachment to the company's culture. And executives are concerned that with everybody all over the country and nobody getting together around the water fountain and the coffee pot, that the culture is going to suffer. So there's still a push to come back. At the same time, as you pointed out, they're being very sensitive to, we can't push too fast, too soon. People are still uncomfortable. The data's still not in, and probably won't be for a while in terms of the real effectiveness of vaccines, masks, et cetera, et cetera. So that's going to take a while to play out. And I think, as you said, the meetings are going to be more meaningful meetings. They'll be fewer and far between. Instead of an hour, they might be a half-day meeting, maybe a whole-day meeting. So that's going to change. But companies that I'm seeing, talking to, and reading about and hearing about, they're being very cautious to not push too fast, but still get people to start coming back in. So to me, I think that hybrid question that Jim asked a few minutes ago, it's going to be a hybrid office. There'll be certain days when people are in, or there'll be, rotating days. But people will start to be coming back to the office, and salespeople will have more opportunities. And companies, I don't know if companies are going to require salespeople necessarily to be in their offices. I think they'll first require that salespeople to be in their customers' and clients' offices. I think before they'll say, you have to get to my office.
Steve, how are your clients onboarding new employees and integrating them into the company culture during this time, and what do you anticipate going into the future for these new hires?
What continues to surprise me is how often I hear about not just the onboarding process, but the recruiting process being entirely virtual. And I think if you had told me or anybody else in business 2 years ago that's what's going to be happening for some relatively critical positions, I would have been amazed. But that's happening, and I think the onboarding is going to happen in the same way. If for no other reason, people are getting hired, not in the geography that they're going to be attached to. So it's kind of hard to make all that face-to-face happen without incurring a lot of costs. And what is going to suffer is what I mentioned a few minutes ago, and that's the culture of the company, and the teaming that comes around with actually knowing people as opposed to just seeing people across the screen. But I think the onboarding is going to happen, continue to happen virtually. It's more efficient that way. I don't see that changing, even though it's obviously better if you could, drop somebody into an office or a warehouse or a factory complex to get to know the real people they're going to be working with. I think it's still a while off. And we had conversations earlier, Jim. We were talking about how quickly the salespeople are going to get back into their customers' offices. Well, the issue is, where are the customers going to be? They're going to be home. They're not going to be in their offices. So it's going to be hard to orchestrate all of those things, not just the sales process, but like you said, the onboarding and the just people getting to know each other.
We've seen some themes in the last year or so of sales forces and sales managers becoming much more, even being forced to become much more proficient in automating tools, automating sales metrics, using tools, marketing automation tools, just because, and this may be a overly simple statement, but it was easier just to go see someone face to face and discuss whatever the challenge was or whatever you wanted to achieve. And because you couldn't do that, in for lack of a better term, you had to be more sophisticated using tools. Have you seen that in most industries?
Oh yes, absolutely. And what's it was already starting to happen, and now it's just accelerated. Where you don't need a salesperson to take you through the catalog and to show you what your products are. The customers are doing that on their own, and they're doing it. The obvious one, just going to the website, but they're also doing it because of digital marketing. It's coming to them, and it's not coming to them with a salesperson attached to it. So they're much more informed. And again, that's been underway for at least a decade, probably decades, as the internet just taken over our lives. That's going to continue. You'll end up with the digital marketing and marketing on the front end from a lead generation standpoint. Those leads are going to be better leads. They'll be, you'll be more educated about them as as a salesperson makes the first contact with them. They'll be more educated about you and your company before that happens as well. And that whole process will have taken place, virtually, with no Zoom face-to-face discussions. It'll all have happened, and it'll be sitting there waiting for you in your CRM system. I'm exaggerating a little bit. But it's going to make the lead generation process more efficient, more effective. The leads will be better. The sales process will be more efficient. And it's all because of the use of all the digital tools that are coming in. You didn't ask it, but my biggest concern, I guess a year ago, was when companies react to this and everything's virtual, they're going to say, well, if we could have a manager manage 6 people in real time, face to face, traveling with them, et cetera, now virtually a manager is going to be able to manage 18 people because of all these tools. Fortunately, that has not happened, across the board. There are pockets of it. Because what you're going to lose if you do that, and it's tempting from a cost standpoint, you'll lose that, Jim, your point about the social aspect of sales. It's also social internally, not just with customers. You'll lose all the coaching that the manager does, and all of that development and support of the salesperson, the sales team. If you start overloading your manager with all this headcount, whether it's face to face or over the phone or over Zoom or Teams, whatever, there'll be no real coaching and development and management going on with that many people. I just hope that the cost attraction of that doesn't overtake the real value that the manager-salesperson relationship produces. The earlier part of the question about the manager and how they're going to manage, it's going to be by the metrics, and managers have been too often, your better salespeople. And they weren't equipped to manage in the social way. They're really not going to be equipped to manage from a mindset standpoint. I mean, they're certainly smart people, but from a mindset standpoint and an enjoyment standpoint, they're not going to really thrive on managing by the numbers and not having that social, personal aspect of the management process and developing people.
Steve, as a follow-up to that, several years ago, and going back 5, 10, even 15 years ago, there's been this avalanche of Salesforce and all these other tools. Yes, salespeople report, and they're quite good, and they're very good. But one of the things that we've seen, I think Jim has as well, we've gone into companies where they've overloaded the salespeople with so many tools and so many responsibilities that used to be taken and handled by what we call sales assistants. The allure of cutting that expense was so great that companies convinced themselves that if we buy enough tools, then we don't need that extra person on the payroll. Is that even a greater danger? I mean, this love of lowering cost and more automation. In one case, a salesperson told me that 45 to 50% of their day was spent just servicing the tools and the platforms. That's a half a sales day.
Yeah, I'm surprised that you didn't say it was 75%. It's really, they're overloaded with this stuff. And like I said, most of it is really good stuff, but taken in total, it's overwhelming. And then it compromises the whole Salesforce platform. If they just don't have the time and the guidance as to what to really focus on and which of those things are really going to be beneficial for them, as opposed to just having to go through the paces and deal with all this. They are overwhelmed with all the internal quote enablement stuff. I don't think they've quite figured it out yet. No, hopefully no one's going to punch me for saying this, but the CRM platforms still are not, at least I'm not seeing evidence of it. Maybe I'm not hanging out in the right places, but they still really aren't viewed as as useful a tool for the salesperson to close deals as they should be and as they purport to be. They're still not helping the salesperson enough day to day with how do I win this deal?
Right.
Yeah, there's all the information there, and that's great. And they've done a good job of having access to all the information, all those enablement tools you just talked about. But it's still not being viewed by most salespeople, at least that I've been in touch with and in contact with over the last 3 to 5 years, of this is really a great tool. It's helped me close all these deals.
We have heard from one of our guests that maybe going back to the office for a salesperson, although not necessary from certain standpoints, does get them out of the house and does get them then out of their cubicle to make sales calls. You care to comment on that?
I think that's right. It will help that, and getting them out of their houses. They want to get out of the houses. They can't wait to get out of the houses. And now they're starting to at least go to restaurants to meet with people. Then getting them to the office. My only hesitation is, Jim, is what I said earlier. If the salesperson's 5 minutes away from the office, yeah, go to the office. If the salesperson has to get on a train to go downtown to go to the office, then we're back to how much time did he or she waste in that commute, and is it really worth it?
Yeah.
With all the virtual tools, isn't there another way to do that doesn't involve all that wasted time? I think that would be a positive thing to get people back to the office, because it comes back with, it'll come back to that cultural issue we talked about earlier. It'll come back with the social issue, and all of that's going to just help these people get back to the top of their game from a interaction with customer standpoint, whether that interaction is virtual or face-to-face.
Steve, no wonder you're such a success.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I can't tell you how much John and I appreciate it.